Hey, welcome back. So, if you guys remember, for the last episode we did on the BMW was for fixing that burnt up LS3 intake. But for today's episode, we're going to go ahead and try to get that intake set up on the car. Now, there's a few things we're going to need to tackle before we can put this on, and I kind of went over that in the last video. So let's go ahead and jump into what we're going to be doing today. So I'm not going to be reusing the old vacuum nipples on here. So what I went ahead and did is flush cut the old one off, drilled the hole, and I'm using a 3/8 MPT tap here to go ahead and tap this hole. So as you see all the way through, we got a perfect hole. Get a good focus. That's tapped all the way through. And in its place, I went ahead and ordered a pack of these 3/8 push lock fittings. Much better to use in the vacuum lines. These ones, you don't need to have a clamp on the end of them. When you push the hose in there, they actually have some teeth in there that will bite down. So this is going to end up being my vacuum reference for the fuel pressure regulator and the blow-off valve. So both of them are here on this side. And at the moment, I don't know that I'll be using it for anything else. If I order a boost controller soon, I might also put that in off this one, or I might add them on the back of the intake. Nice, easy, clean way to do this. A 10 pack of these are like $10. So, I mean, it's going to look so much cleaner and neater. And just like that, that's what they look like installed. Pretty nice. They do come with their own thread sealant already on the threads, but a little extra protection. I like to use a little liquid thread sealant on there because I feel just better insurance. I don't want vacuum leaks on the intake, though. This is kind of important to me. So one of the nice things about doing it this way is if I ever decide I don't want to use that anymore, I can just unscrew that and throw one of these Allen head plugs in. So too bad it's not big enough to block this off. So since we're relocating the map sensor to the back of the intake, I'm not going to be using this anymore. So we're just actually going to 3D print a plug off for this. We CAD design a lot of our own parts, so it's nothing for us to throw these two measurements in there and just print out a plug for it. So it'll work just fine. So when we picked this up, it's just a completely bare intake. So I did have to get a throttle body. So I went ahead and ordered the largest one that'll go on here without a spacer. And this one is designed for a 92mm throttle body. So that's what I went for. I could have went the route of getting a 102. And honestly, the price on these ones were very similar, and it was really, really close. The problem is running a 102, you're going to have to get a throttle body spacer, and it's necking it down to a 92 anyway. So there's really zero benefit from running the 102 over the 92 unless you port the intake, and you can't port the intake to a 102 without completely destroying the O-ring groove. But this is what I ended up ordering. So some of you guys might know. This is our run-of-the-mill eBay Chinese 92mm throttle body. Now, the reason I picked this one, I paid like $60 for this thing. It actually came with the idler stepper motor and the throttle position sensor. I know these are known for being a little problematic. There's a few things we need to do to them. One thing is there's a bushing in here that's actually supposed to be missing from factory, so we got to tear this whole thing apart and then take a look at that and see if that bushing's in there. We have a couple of them. So we're going to see about if this one is one of the ones that are missing it, then it's going to get replaced. The other thing is I'm not a fan of these vacuum ports on here just because, I mean, look at this. I haven't done anything with it yet, and that's what it looks like. So I hear these leak, and I hear they can also be pushed out with boost. So since this intake is a drive-by-wire, it actually already has the nipple on the side here. So if I'm going to end up using that, because I honestly should be running a catch can setup on here, but we're only doing around 5 pounds of boost. It hasn't proven to be any big issue yet. I will upgrade to a catch can, but for now I still need to run this crankcase vent into the intake, so I think I'll be using this one instead. But I need to do something with this. And I think the best thing to do, I think this is going to be about a 1/4 inch, so I'm going to grab some 1/4 inch plugs. I think I'll just tap and thread that and put a plug in there. If this one wasn't anodized and it was just silver, I would think about just TIG welding that closed. But if I do that on here, I'll end up destroying the anodized finish on there. I think just tapping it and putting a plug in there is going to be the best route for that. But like I said, I'm not a fan. I mean, I shouldn't be able to do that. That should be pressed in, and I shouldn't be able to do that. We had a similar issue with the one on the Mustang, and it is super loose, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to plug it off. Now, here's the other problem. This is why you can't run a truck water pump with the car setups, because let's see if I can even get it back there. So if you look here, this is totally hitting. There's no way to even actuate this thing unless there we go. Now I can get it to sit flat-ish. So the problem is the water neck comes out and it's a complete interference with this throttle linkage. Now the way this is handled on the cars is the water neck actually is supposed to come out the front here. So you'll see some water pumps actually have a double embossment. They have the embossment up here and they'll have one on the front. This one doesn't have it. This one's only truck. It can only be truck. However, you'll see that some water pumps come with both embossments that they're cast for either or. So here's what we ended up with. I grabbed another truck one, and what you see is I removed the water neck from the top, and I cut a piece of aluminum plate. So this needs to be TIG welded in. It's just sitting on there for right now. And then I went ahead and drilled out the other embossment, and I put a pipe in there. So I got to send them over to a buddy's house who can weld aluminum, but these are ready to go. So that's what we're going to have to do to get this intake to clear the water pump without having to swap over to complete F-body accessories, because while it's not overly expensive, I would have to get a new water pump. I'd have to get a new balancer. I'd have to modify my spacers for my custom power steering pump, and then modify the spacers for the alternator mount below that. And like I said, it could be done, but it's purchasing a new water pump and it's purchasing a new balancer and it's doing a bunch of more work, where this is already set up. It still works this way. So extra water pump, easy fix, right? Just go ahead and modify it, weld it out. It'll work. It really will. So it's just part of the struggle of switching over. So we'll go ahead and get that welded up, and that's going to take care of that. All right, and that looks a lot better. So we went ahead and ran that 1/8 inch tap in there, and I put one of the plugs in. So not done just yet. I need to pull that back out and put some thread sealant on there, but we still need to take the throttle body apart, so I didn't want to do anything permanently on there. The other thing I almost forgot to mention is we need to do something with those screws, because if you've ever seen any of the issues that you could have with these, one of the main issues is these screws coming out and then getting sucked into your pistons. So we don't want that to happen here. One of the common ways is I'll see a lot of guys will just take the throttle body off, and on the backside they'll TIG weld those two screws on. I don't know that I want to go that route. I haven't made any firm decisions on it. I know a lot of people say the Loctite will fail, but I'm thinking about just red Loctite and then also peening the back of those screws in, trying to keep it from backing out. If I don't feel safe about it, then definitely I think the TIG welder's coming out and we'll just TIG over the back of the screw heads. I just don't like it being permanent and never being able to take this thing apart and servicing it for anything. While I know you shouldn't have to, it's always in the back of my mind that you might have to. So just things to consider.
So there's a couple drawbacks to using these intakes. One of the main issues, now one, this is a really serious issue that you could have, and this is not just limited to the China throttle bodies, but these screws backing out. And if you ever see what happens, these screws will back out and you're not going to see it. Once they start coming loose, you're not going to know about it because your intake pipe's going to be on here. You're going to be wide open throttle on here. These things are just going to go whoop and fling right into your pistons, and they're going to destroy everything. So some people will flip them around, and they'll actually, I've seen them TIG weld the back of these on. You're just going to run the TIG torch on that for a few seconds just to melt this rod into the screw a little bit, and it keeps it from backing out. The other thing is going to be our friend here, red Loctite. What I'm planning on doing is Loctite along with, I'm going to take these screws out, take this rod out, and I'm going to crimp the final couple threads with a punch on both of these. That way it actually pinches the threads, and as you start running the screw through, it'll actually bind up on the screw and it'll make it really, really tight. So I think that should be fine for us. I don't like the idea of TIG welding those in just in case I ever have to remove this for any reason whatsoever. I know that's not very likely. I know this is usually, it's going to be together for the rest of its life, but in the back of my mind, this needs to be serviceable to some extent. That brings us to the second issue that these China throttle bodies are really well known for, and that's boost leaks. So what happens is, if you see over on this side, your throttle position sensor goes in here, and there's an O-ring that seals your throttle position sensor to this body, and that keeps this from leaking. Now on this side, you can't see it back there, but there's nothing that keeps that from sealing. So what do? We add an O-ring. So this is an oil O-ring, and that's going to seal that. So what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a boost leak where it's going to be pushing boost or pulling vacuum if you're naturally aspirated right through the side here. And that's not good. So we're going to go ahead and make those two modifications to this throttle body to make it a pretty solid unit. It came out really easy too. So you can see no Loctite from the factory. And that was very easy for me to take out. Nothing. Whoosha. So this has a set screw on the back here. I'm just gonna put that Allen wrench in there, and that's actually pretty tight. So actually, it's nice that they put Loctite somewhere, I guess. Jeez. Oh my gosh. Well, they used Loctite there. I guess can't complain that they didn't use it anywhere. Remember, this is under spring pressure, so when we pull it up, we gotta hold that down so it doesn't go flinging. And there we go. So this is about 180 degrees back, so just remember its position when you go put it back in. It's 180 degrees, and then when it goes on, it goes 180 degrees. Boom. We want to kind of remember how that spring sits in there. So the spring sits in the little cup right next to the set screw, as you can see there. Boom. And then on the throttle body itself, on the side here, it's kind of hard to see. You can see where the ends of the springs are sitting out right there. That was hard to see, but there's a little pocket for it on the bottom of this. Now, careful with this because this is two separate springs, so they do want to kind of come apart. Just keep them together, and we're going to keep them oriented downwards like this. All right, so now that we have that off, you can kind of see what the issue is. See, all we have down here is a bearing for that to ride on. We have no seal, so if we put this over there, this looks like it's actually set up perfect for this. So we'll have to grab a socket to drive that on real quick. Fits on there perfectly, nice good seal on there. All right, so we're gonna use a socket to drive that on. 16 millimeters seems to be perfect. Fits the diameter just fine, and you want it to be just slightly smaller. Now remember, this is an oil seal, so they actually have a little spring on the inside there. So make sure you don't jam that on there. Make sure it slides on smoothly on the shaft, otherwise you will pinch that back and that spring will come out. And I'm just gonna look at the back of there and make sure that nothing got hung up. Yep, nope, it looks all good. And then we just gotta drive that into the slot. All right, so sitting down there nice and flush. Looks pretty good. So that should really prevent any major boost leaks. So that should really make all the difference on how these things operate versus the high-end ones. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this back together real quick, and then we're gonna work on these threads. Get a better shot, see the groove. All right. So like I said, we're gonna put that 180 degrees out. And we wanna make sure that those two springs sit in that pocket there. Sit in that little pocket right there. We'll go ahead and rotate it past, and now we can go ahead and push it in. Boom. Easy peasy. So then we'll go ahead and put our set screw back in. So remember, we want about 90 foot-pounds and then about a 90-degree turn past that, just like head studs. Yep. All right, so what I'm gonna go ahead and do now, I'm gonna go ahead and put my punch in here on the back side of it, and I'm gonna put it in there between like the second and third thread and give it a couple taps to deform those threads. That's gonna pinch the threads around it. So right before the screw gets completely bottomed out, it's gonna have a couple of threads that it has to really fight to get past it, and it's gonna get pinched in there. That's gonna give it a lot of extra incentive to not back out. So we're gonna do that to both of these. So that should be good enough. I don't know if you guys will be able to see in there. Let's see if we can see in there at all. And you can see how I pinched those threads in there. That should give it a little more to hold it. So, all right, let's go ahead and put her back together. So. All right, so she's back together. Kind of hard to see, but you can't see any daylight through there, so that's a nice good seal. I was actually surprised at how good that actually looks. You see how dark it gets there? All right, guys, throttle body is done. This one's good to go. All right, so the list is a little long, so we're not going to waste any time. We're just going to start working. I'll go ahead and give you guys a quick little rundown of what needs to be done. So a few things we talked about. Water pump. Can't run a truck water pump with the LS3 intake. Reason being, throttle body linkage will hit the neck on the water pump. So we can't run this water pump, but we do have another option, so we'll go over that. We will have to replace the fuel rails. We got something for that. We will have to relocate our IAT sensor. So it used to use the EGR provision in the side of the intake. We're not using that anymore because the new intake won't have that, so we're gonna have to move it into the charge pipe. Easy enough. We're gonna have to redo our wiring. Since everything right now is routed underneath the intake, we are gonna have to redo that. The LS3 intake will not give us that room, so we're gonna have to actually rerun it all over, and that does give me a chance to redo this because I just hate this. Convoluted loom is just like the ugliest thing on the planet, so I am kind of happy to be able to redo that. It gives me a little bit of joy here. I know it sounds like a long list, but they're all relatively small things. It's just a lot of small things. So the first thing we're gonna work on is just removing everything that's not gonna stay. So as you guys can see, I already kind of got a head start. Pulled off a few things here. Pulled off part of the charge pipe. I pulled off the accessory belt. I pulled off one of the pulleys. It just cleared room up. So just knocked out a few things. More or less, I just needed some of those parts to work on other things. So I just went ahead and got that knocked out first. So we're gonna go ahead and drain the coolant, take the water pump off. We're gonna get the intake off, fuel rail injectors. And then we're gonna get everything prepped to get the intake on there. Once that's all on, we're gonna try to get as much of everything mounted. And then we'll work on rerunning and relooming all the wires. That way they're nice. They still, even though they won't be tucked under the intake, I think I can still make them look pretty decent. So yeah, let's just go ahead and start working on pulling everything out of there. Really conflicted feelings here. As much as I do like the new intake and I really want to, put the original hood back on, it's the OG intake. I built this car. I built the engine before I built the car, and that was the intake I built with this engine. This is my very first LS swap, my very first LS build, and it's going away. No, it's not going away. This is not the last you guys will see of this intake. Bigger and better. Bigger and blown upper things. Maybe what's right for this intake is to go back on the blown up 5.3 that it was originally built on. So this will probably go on the burnout motor. We're not getting rid of you. Not so fast. Let's see. And that's one of the biggest pains on this car, is I don't have a whole lot of room. If you see that right there is right on top of it. So getting that thing out of there is a big pain. So I think I have everything disconnected now, and it should be able to come right on out. But getting it up and over. Come on. Come on. Yep, you're coming. It's coming. Oh, yeah, it's coming. Hang on. Let's disconnect these gaskets. It may not look like much, but they are actually going to be holding in the wire harnesses that run underneath, because it kind of tucks in between them. It's one of the pains about this. It makes it really hard to work on. But, let's see. Ha-ha! There we go. Woo! Actually, it wasn't all that much work. I was kind of making it sound a lot worse than it was. Oh, so. Hey, there's my intake leak. I found it. Look at you. I wonder how that happened. There's my hanging idol. Well, mystery solved, I guess. Wonder what happened there. It's helpful to know, but look at some of these. Look at this one here. Seen better days. Looks like something I don't want to mention, but got another one there. Well, that thing is cooked, boys. Oh, she's cooked, boys. She's cooked. These are flattened. Yeah, well, that's the mystery of the hanging idle there. Well, we should probably make this thing a lot easier to tune now, I swear. Maybe I shouldn't have reused those like 3 or 4 times. Oh, well, you know how it goes. But now you guys can see that's the big massive wire harness that's been hanging out underneath the intake. And that's going to be why we have to rewire. So all of those need to come up and over with the spacers that we have to run to go from the cathedral port to the LS3's rectangle ports. It should give us a little bit of room. I might be able to run a small segment of wires underneath them for, like, say, the coolant temp, the alternator, the throttle body, the IAC stepper, but everything for the coils and the injectors, I'm going to have to come back here. The other issue is when I first did this harness, I was unsure. I didn't really want to cut any of the wires, so what I ended up doing was folding them back and forth, so it's got a lot of wire in there. What we're going to end up doing is just cutting a lot of those to length and re-terminating them at the connector. First one, I didn't want to really start chopping into the harness. Kind of, never felt great about that. So now that I know I can do it correctly, it'll be fine.
One eternity later.
Well, that was not as easy as I was hoping it would be. I got the wiring done. It took a little bit of work. As you can see, it's several days later, different shirt, all that stuff. Honestly, I had to gut a lot of that wiring out. A lot of it was just from when I first built the harness. It was the first time I was a little skittish about shortening any of the wires, so I took all the slack. I just really quickly ran it back and forth under the intake and loomed it in. But as you guys know, it won't work that way here. So here's where we're at now. Wow, so much cleaner. Should have just done that to begin with. We trimmed a lot of the wire out. Honestly, we trimmed the fat. There was just so much extra in here, mainly for the transmission. Went down, instead of going down to the transmission, it came from the backbone here. From the ECU, came down here, looped back and forth, and went down. We trimmed all of those, spliced them back together with nice clean joints. Now, look at that, just so much better. Everything's all nice and loomed. It looks so pretty. Got our coil packs and our injectors back there. Got the one little dangly here is for our map sensor. Already have the cam position sensor and the oil pressure sensor plugged in. Everything else gets plugged in afterwards. I mean, I could plug some of these in. But all that work, there's what I yanked out. I know, that is just horrendous. Now, I know some of you guys might be asking, why didn't I film it? To be painfully honest with you, I don't feel like we have nearly enough subscribers for me to start boring any of you to death watching me clean that harness up. It was painful. I didn't want to do it. I wouldn't subject you guys to watch that either. But what's done is done, so just move on, okay? Next step. Let's get that water pump out of there, right? Because of that outlet, we won't be able to clear the throttle body on the intake, so it's got to go. And we got the new one all set up and ready to go. So we'll go ahead. We're going to drain the coolant. Try not to spill the rest of it on my garage floor here, but you know it's going to happen. So we'll go ahead and drain the coolant and then get that water pump out. Well, that was fun. A little tight fit to get that hose off just because of how it's pinched in there and around everything. So decided to just loosen the thermostat. And I had a bucket underneath there to catch some of the coolant. I mean, mud water from what it looks like. But luckily for me, 99% of it landed all over that exhaust wrap like I thought it would. And then the rest of it, all over my garage floor. So, plus fun for that. Good news is it looks like it's all drained out now. I mean, now I get to clean my floor. But we can go ahead and pull this thermostat off real quick and go ahead and yank this water pump out. So I've been dealing with some intermittent overheating issues when this car sits in traffic for a long period of time. My original thought was that I'm cramming so much into this engine bay that it's just heat soaking. But then I found that. So that's the O-ring. I don't know if I can get a good shot of that. The O-ring that's supposed to be sealing it was just jammed in there like this. So I don't think it was even opening up barely. Definitely wasn't flowing very well. And that is disgusting. This thermostat was brand new when I built the car. And I mean, that is, ugh, it's sludge, guys. Looks like we're doing a little flush job to this cooling system. Yum, yum. Get a taste of that. Victory! Woo! So I made a considerably large mess here, and it just keeps getting considerably larger. But we got the water pump out. Yeah, bye boy. Yeah, I think I need to flush this whole cooling system out. That looks rusty. It's just, oh my gosh. Got it out. We'll go ahead and get the new one put in. I need to get a new rear O-ring for it first. We'll get that taken care of. We'll slap that puppy in here. Then we'll be able to start setting in the new intake and connecting wires. Fun stuff, guys. Fun stuff. So this is the direction we ended up going for the water pump. So what I went ahead and did here is I heated up and removed this return line, and then went ahead and capped it and welded it, and then put a new return line in the front here. So, and I want to say a big shout out to our friend Kurt. So he does all of our aluminum welding. He was the one who re-welded the oil pan on the BMW after the motor blew up and cracked the oil pan. And he was able to re-weld that, and it never leaked, it never seeped, nothing. And that was with cast aluminum that was saturated with oil. He did an absolute hell of a job, and I can't thank him enough for that. But he went ahead and hooked us up and took care of welding this cast as well. And before I painted it, you could actually see there was absolutely no telling where that weld puddle ended and where the metal started, because it just flowed through. It flowed through perfectly. So as always, Kurt did a bang up job on that. Thank you, man. That was awesome. We'd have a hell of a time trying to figure this out without you helping out. So thank you. But as you can see, and we do have a little bit of interference there. The bottom of the throttle body is just kissing the top of this. I could shave this down, but right now we don't have our spacers. They're actually in the mail for delivery today, and it's going to lift this thing up about right there. So, I mean, that's going to give us more than enough room. It might also give us enough room, hopefully, to run some of the wires to the bottom of there, so that way we're not draping everything over the top, because I only want to have to run for the injector harnesses and the coil packs and just run them kind of down the side there. I'm trying to get away from running everything all the way up to the front, so hopefully we have enough room. So we just have it on this motor right now for mock-up, but then it's going to get pulled off and put back onto the BMW here. So we got the water pump all installed. Honestly, looks pretty killer, right? This whole thing is starting to look a lot cleaner. So I did have to go ahead and move my upper radiator hose slash pipe slash hose. Before I had my 90 degree coming right into the top here, I had to trim this pipe up a little bit, move everything down, move it kind of in and down to clear the wastegate. But now we're pretty good, and I can fit a whole finger in between there. So good enough, right? Really not a whole lot left to do here. Throw the intake on, right? We still have to do the fuel lines, still waiting for those to come in, but those should be in soon enough. We don't have to wait for the fuel lines to do the hood. I just want to get the intake on. So really, there's nothing left to do other than get that intake on here. Gonna be sweet. Shoo, buddy, does that look nice. So, yeah, as you know, I couldn't have just left it black. Had to throw a little bit of flair on it. You guys like it? I like it. It's nice, it's subtle. Not just throwing it in your face, but it's there. Kind of matches the little bit of red we got everywhere else on this motor, but it looked good. So she's all mounted up, boys. Fuel rails installed. Got to plug them in. Intake installed. Got the spacers down there, as you can see. Looks nice and sealed up. Won't be able to tell until we run it. God, I hope they're sealed. But got the fuel rails installed. Crossover in the back. Went to our regulator. Well, still need to mount the regulator. Yee. But I don't know. I think that sketchy amount of play is okay when the regulator's just inches above the exhaust. It'll be fine. It'll be just fine. But gosh, boys, we are done. Look at it. So much nicer. Look how low. That is just phenomenal. Got plenty of clearance here. We're going to be able to put the old hood on just fine, so we can just get rid of this guy here and pitch it. I mean, I'll probably throw it in the corner of the garage. I don't know. Somebody want it? Anybody LS swapping an E36? Want a janky cut up hood? Hit me up, let me know. We can work something out. But there it is. I still have to pressure test the fuel system, but I need a hose barb to connect the return line here. Right now, the return line is just vent to atmosphere, which, I mean, could be fine. We can just aim it right down at the header. It'll all be okay. I mean, it'll all be okay, right? I have a hard time not just sitting back and staring at this thing. It looks so much nicer, so much cleaner. Yeah, I like it. So really nothing left to do but get this hood off and get the old hood back on. So right now I have it sitting up on top. Oh man, is she dusty. And you can see where my body kind of helped clean some of it, so I'm a little dusty, but we need to clean it up. But more importantly, we just need to get it put back on. So let's go ahead and get this hood off. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and get this hood off and then put the old one back on, and we're ready to rock. I don't know. Who else thinks I should just leave that hood off? It looks great, don't it? Cue DMX where the hood at. I don't know. That's a copyright violation. Let's not do that. But we got her off. Now, just got to put the old one back on. Golly, it's really, guys, it's been a long time coming. I really wanted this original hood back on for a while. Now it's back on. Still a little bit of, still absolutely need to mount the latches because yeah, they're on the other hood. But I mean, golly, it's home. This is your forever home. It's where you belong. So there was a fair amount of work involved in this, but honestly, a lot of that was changing a lot of things over to be able to swap from the truck intake to the car intake. If we would have built this entire twin turbo setup around the car intake to begin with, that was where all the work went in. But that's going to go ahead and do it for today's video. If you guys stuck around this long, thank you for watching. And please don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys.